Let's get to read on the trade front right now, and the president getting very much in the face of our European allies and obviously ruffling some feathers. That is not new. What is remarkable is the fact that Wall Street is applauding whatever he's doing. Or maybe it could be a case of, on the trade front, they expect cooler heads will prevail. The Heritage Foundation's David Kreutzer joins us right now. David, I'm sorry I lost my place. Let's get your take, first of all, on where you see this trade battle going. Because I think for the time being, it will define the pace and the tone of our markets. The better it looks for not having a trade war, the better stocks look, the worse, just the opposite. What do you think?
No, absolutely. Nobody wins a trade war unless the president claims he wants to do this to negotiate down tariffs on both sides. But everybody that's a protectionist says that. I hope he's not one of them. But so far, the tariffs have been damaging. You know, they're not helping our economy. Any bump we get in the stock market or GDP is in spite of these tariffs.
So when the president wants to up the ante, let's say even the case of NATO, where he is talking about having them dramatically boost their defense commitment, forget about 2% of their GDP, 4% of their GDP, even though we've heard from Emmanuel Macron of France, that never came up, it was never considered, and certainly it was never approved by fellow members. So there obviously is some disagreement, I mean, what was agreed to and what wasn't. But that, too, doesn't appear to worry for either their markets, coincidentally, or ours. What do you make of that?
Yeah, that there's a lot of other stuff going on in the economy. There's been deregulation, there have been tax cuts. You know, the businesses aren't as worried about new regulations except for the tariffs. That's the uncertainty out there. But right now, it looks like the balance is leaning towards more good things than bad things. That doesn't mean the tariffs aren't bad. And it doesn't mean that ruffling feathers is somehow good for the world economy, because I don't think it is.
So if the president were to get his way, and now talking about throwing tariffs on the Chinese to an additional $200 billion worth of goods, and the Chinese have to up the ante in one way, shape, or form, even though they don't buy nearly as many goods on their part, you could look at a technical condition where the Chinese violate the agreements established by the WTO, the very body that they prefer we go through than the route we're taking. I could imagine that becomes a mess.
Yeah, it would become a mess, and I think there's some complaints that our use of national security for tariffs on steel and coal, steel and aluminum and some other things, is also a violation. So, you know, these are problems. You know, what I would like to focus on is something that got very little coverage. At the end of the G7 meeting, the president had said, look, what about zero tariffs? He had this on the table. Right. It got no coverage, I think in part because he was going to his meeting with in North Korea immediately afterwards. But I'd like to say, hey, let's encourage that part. You know, nobody that does trade seriously really thinks that tariffs are a good idea. And so we've all been complaining about them. Let's see if we can do something positive and say, hey, you said zero tariffs. Let's go with that. And I don't know if he's going to say anything quite like that at NATO, and all of this may get lost as well because he has that meeting with Putin immediately afterwards.
All right, we'll watch closely. David Kreutzer, thank you. Heritage Labor Markets and Trade Senior Research Fellow. Very good having you.
Thank you very much.
All right, I want to